Hello and welcome to NoCB, a grand strategy podcast. I am your host, TJ Hafer. With me this week is our usual panel, including Lambert.
Hello there.
And including Father Lorist.
Hello.
I think I put a T on the end there intentionally. So you're Father Lorist.
I'm rebranding.
You're a lorist.
Father Lorist.
Yeah, you are a person who lores. You're a lorist.
Yeah.
And our special guest this week, Tokryva.
Hi.
So since you are our guest, as is tradition, why don't you just let everybody know who you are and how you got into grand strategy games?
Well, I'm Tokryva, also known as Tanya, and I've been playing grand strategy games since like Victoria 2 at the very least. Still got more hours in Hearts of Iron 3 than 4, which should say something. And yeah, I've loved almost every Paradox game ever since.
Excellent. What do you play mostly these days?
Mostly Stellaris.
Okay. And there we go. You got the link in the chat if you guys want to follow Tokryva on YouTube or subscribe or whatever word they're using now. I always end up telling people to subscribe on Twitch, and then I forget that costs money, and then I have to remember which websites are using which verbs now. Well, we have some fairly substantial dev diaries to look at today, including one that I think was more confusing to most people than it was informative. CK3, they went over their new event scripting system. Which even as someone who has modded CK2 and EU4, this was a little bit of an intimidating dev diary, but it looks like they are kind of going towards making it a lot easier to script conditional stuff. Like, you know, if you have an event that it's going to say something slightly different if you live in the desert versus the mountains or something like that, there's going to be more versatility, and it's not going to be as much of a pain in the ass to script stuff like that, which is pretty cool. And it'll be easier to add like default responses to events, like if the specific traits of your character that the event is looking for to display special text, if none of those are fulfilled, it's a lot easier to like put in like, okay, this is what the event is going to say as a fallback if you're not Jain or I don't know, Tibetan culture or, you know, whatever all the little conditional statements are. Then probably the coolest part of it is showing off how you can script like event backgrounds and like character poses and animations and facial expressions and things like that, which is going to make it give us a lot more tools to like tell interesting visual stories with events, which I really like. I don't know if any of you have done much modding, but was there anything about this dev diary that you felt like was particularly exciting?
Well, I've only ever really done graphical modding, and the rest of my mods are sort of like hodgepodge, disgusting messes of variables and stuff that would make any sort of proper programmer just cry. But I quite like it. I mean, it's this dev diary is not particularly for me, but I quite like how it's still accessible, because I think this is the biggest worry about as games become a bit more, the graphics get more intense, so there's 3D models involved more, but the modability goes down because it's harder to get into it, right? Because you'll have to go into modeling and animation and stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's something I've been concerned with Shadow Kings, which is my vampire, werewolf, dark fantasy type mod. I'm working on pre-production for CK3. Is like, I don't think I have the ability to like go into Maya and like sculpt fangs onto a character model. I'll probably have to rely on someone else for that kind of stuff. If it was just a portrait, I could go into Photoshop and put some little fangs on there. But you're right.
I got the same thing with Stellaris, because I was thinking of doing like a character pack for Stellaris, right, while I was launching, but the characters have little animations and rigging and stuff, and I'm too much of an idiot to know how to do any of that. So like, that sort of thing's completely inaccessible to me. If it ain't 2D and static, that's it. I'm buggered.
Yeah.
My entire experience with modding is changing some of the values in EU4's defines.lua. This dev diary wasn't really for me, but I do like to play with mods, and it's good for those people who make the mods. So in that sense, yeah, all for it. If it makes it easier for the people that I love making mods to make mods, then awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was highly interested in this dev diary, but if you aren't actively making mods for CK3, it's probably not that big of a probably not that meaningful to you specifically. I am glad to see that it's not like this arcane nightmare that I was kind of imagining in my head, because when I heard, oh, they're getting rid of mean time to happen, and like everything's going to be like a conditional trigger now, and there's all these like character model posing and like all this extra stuff, I was worried that I was going to open up the event files and just feel like I was looking at hieroglyphics or something. So it's good to see that they've actually made the structure of the code a little bit easier to parse than CK2 was. So that's definitely a huge step in the right direction. And I cannot wait until I actually have some code for CK3 to start playing with, because now all I have is, pages and pages Memories. Of notes. And yeah, I have a design document. I have like some documentation set up where I have described in detail what events are supposed to do, but I can't actually start figuring out how to implement that until we have code. So, yeah.
Well, we have one of the modders for Mayo and Taxes in chat, and he says the modding dev diary for CK3 was amazing. They basically have what Imperator Rome has and more. So, I mean, I trust Flopsy, so yay. Great dev diary. Didn't understand a word of it, but awesome.
Tokryva, have you done much modding or messed around with mods at all?
Nope, not at all. So it's a lot of gibberish in general to me. But what I did find interesting is the fact that they're like, the portrait system is going to be very dynamic and how that's going to show up, and I feel that will definitely show a very diverse amount of events, and that it's going to be very much dynamic. It's definitely compared to CK2.
Yeah, I think that the freedom we're going to have to help characters in these events seem more realistic, or just feel more like real people. If you go listen to, I'll plug really quick, the latest 3 Moves Ahead episode is just me and Rob Zachney talking about the Crusader Kings 3 hands-on demo for like an hour. And I think that's like the one thing we both kind of came away with most strongly is versus CK2 is just how much more real the characters feel. So yeah, definitely.
Good to know. Are there any mods that you're very much looking forward to for CK3 then?
I mean, Game of Thrones is the big obvious one. I've played more of the CK2.
Oh, let's not get onto this again.
Yeah, well, if you want to hear a Game of Thrones opinions,
I think you no.
Yeah, go ahead and go back one episode.
Do you think it's going to be as popular now, though?
I don't know, because let's see, when CK2 Game of Thrones came out, was the first season of the TV show even out yet? Like, I feel like it was in that kind of hype period where they were talking about the TV show and everybody else was going out to read the books who hadn't read them yet because they knew it was going to be a TV show, but I don't know if the show had started yet. I'm probably wrong.
Crusader Kings 2 came out the year after Game of Thrones started.
Okay. So the show was already going. I feel like people who are fans of the book are going to jump on it regardless because we're hungry for more Game of Thrones content that is not in any way related to D&D.
Yeah.
So, I think from that perspective, it will still have a strong following. I don't know if it will be as popular as the CK2 mod was. just because, yeah, people who were not already big Game of Thrones fans are kind of done with it now, it seems like. I don't really know a lot of people who came to the series because of the TV show who are still like, oh man, I can't wait for the Winds of Winter. But like the people I knew who were into the books before still are that way. So
yeah, I'm still waiting on it.
I watched the first 2 episodes of Game of Thrones, the TV show. Hadn't a clue what Game of Thrones was at the time. Then bought the books and finished all of the books that were out at the time. So not the Winds of Winter. And that's the one that's coming out. What's the one that's Dance with Dragons? That one hadn't come out at the time.
Yeah.
And I finished the entire book series before the first season ended. So I was kind of hooked on the books, and I count myself as a bookie when it comes to Game of Thrones. Lord Lambert of House Fuck the Show.
Oh, I definitely am too.
I used to be like really puritanical too when the show came out. It was like, look at these people who haven't read the books. But now I accept others into the fold now. If you,
I do know a lot of people who found it through the show who are now, as you would say, bookies. Like they recognize like the books are the one true Game of Thrones. And
I'm happy to allow them into the fold. But when the series first came out, I wasn't. So I've changed my mind on that front. Like,
I've
become more evangelical about my books.
That was a different.
As long as you weren't one of the people that spoiled the Red Wedding, then it's all good, really.
Oh yeah.
No. I mean,
I'll look down on you, but I won't spoil it for you.
Yeah, it's awful.
I was watching.
Anyone who did that.
I was watching that episode with somebody who had never seen the books before, and she was just looking at me trying to figure out why I wasn't saying anything and why I just had like this weird grin on my face the entire episode.
I watched it with my parents. Watched the episode with my parents. They hadn't read the books, obviously, but I had at that point. Oh, so good.
We already have complaints from last week about how this isn't a Game of Thrones podcast, so let's move on to some Hearts of Iron news. Actually, very few. Oh, go ahead.
If you want to talk about other fantasy stuff, definitely I would be looking forward to either an Elder Scrolls or a Witcher.
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
The Elder Kings is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm surprised there was never like a popular Witcher mod for CK2 because it's a great setting for it. I mean, there's lots of political intrigue going on. Witcher mod would be awesome.
I'm still waiting on the Gallivant mod. That's what I want.
I think the
Gallivant mod. Have you not seen Gallivant?
The name rings a bell.
Oh, you missed it out.
Isn't that with Timothy Omenson?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's like a musical comedy thing. It's hilarious. You have to watch it. It's hands down one of the best shows. It's got Vinnie Jones in it. Vinnie Jones does lots of songs. It's brilliant.
I recognize his name. I can't imagine him singing though, so I will be looking this up.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm mostly looking forward to Geheimnisnacht for CK3. Like, I'm just imagining all of the different races with their 3D portraits. Man, if they pull that off, it's going to be phenomenal.
Oh yeah. Have they confirmed for sure that they are going to continue it into CK3?
I don't know.
Okay.
I would hope so.
They've only just updated it. So
someone get Geheimnisnacht on the phone, Mr. Geheimnisnacht, and
Jimmy Geheimnisnacht.
yeah, exactly.
Flopsy, you're German. What does Geheimnisnacht mean? It's something night, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Nacht
is night. Heim is home. So Geheim, I always forget what the different prefixes mean contextually. I did take 4 years of German in college.
Secret night.
Very nice.
Secret.
It's also Dutch as well. But I mean, with Warhammer, the Empire it's basically the Holy Roman Empire. So I would go with German, not Dutch for it. But yeah, Secret Night. It's a cool name.
So Geheim, I guess that would imply something that is secluded to your home.
It's literally secret.
Oh, okay. Well, we learned some.
There we go, then.
Learned some linguistics today. Yeah. But definitely, Game of Thrones, definitely Geheimnisnacht. I'd love if somebody did a Witcher mod. yeah, there's so many good mods to look forward to in CK3, including Shadow Kings, produced by yours truly.
Yeah, I will be playing that one.
Yeah. I think I've talked about it before, but I can link the design doc again if people want to look at it. One sec. We'll put it in chat real quick. Design doc, Shadow Kings, there it is. So, we got a couple of smaller Hearts of Iron related posts this week. One is just for the 1.9.3 patch. They fixed how you could cheese the rebel suppression system by building self-propelled artillery, AA guns, and anti-tank, which in some cases was actually more industrially efficient than like cranking out armored cars. That's one thing I've learned about Husky so far is you can never really have enough armored cars. You will always have notifications talking about how you don't have enough armored cars to suppress the rebels. Right. Yeah.
That's why you should never move away from horses. The greatest use of a modern army. Lots of horses.
Exactly. And they also made it like a little bit more expensive to buy into radar and increase the damage on heavy and medium ships, which will hopefully help them be more of a logical choice versus submarine spam, which has been the meta for a long time. So,
yep.
Yeah. So yeah, kind of a smaller patch. But then the other bigger thing for Hearts of Iron they announced is the devs versus community 3-day war, which is starting today, I believe, actually. And,
I believe it's on right now, is it not?
It was on 2 hours ago.
Well,
yeah. So you've already missed the first sessions, but you could tune into it tomorrow and Saturday as well. They're doing something kind of interesting with they're doing like this virtual House of Commons, where I think is it players or is it community members that are actually making up the different.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, like the commons.
Yeah, I don't know if these are all actual players that are making up this legislative body they've created, but yeah, they have like 2 parties and they have like government ministers and a prime minister and stuff. So it seems like it's going to be pretty interesting.
An assembly of 32 people drawn from mod communities, content creators, and elected from Steam and our social channels.
Okay, so it's a mix of everything, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love stuff like that where they set up some kind of like a meta framework that, you know, where people can influence how the game goes in interesting ways that you wouldn't normally have in single player. So
yeah, it's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, check that out over on the, I think it's is it the Paradox Twitch channel? Yeah, it's the Paradox Interactive Twitch channel. Yeah, and then we also had a very small announcement. I guess it's not very small for console players, but they're finally bringing Apocalypse and the Humanoid Species Pack to Stellaris Console Edition, which is kind of where I would have started, I think. Like, if I was porting Stellaris to console, I would have kind of wanted to start at the Apocalypse patch, because I feel like starting with 1.7, they were just like kind of setting all the console players up to have to completely relearn the game twice. Maybe that's a rite of passage. Like, all of us PC players had to do it, but I don't know. What do you think of?
I will say,
what's that?
Humanoids has my favorite species in it, and also my favorite ship set. Although now with the big chunky behemoth either one, then maybe Avian is now my favorite. But yeah, the humanoid, like this guy here, is actually my favorite. The dude in the center. So I'm quite. I mean, I don't play it on console. I don't actually own a console, so it doesn't affect me. But it's great that people who do play on console can now use the best species.
I do love the humanoid. I use the humanoid portraits probably more than any other portrait set, to be honest. But their ships are very cool. I still think Avian is my favorite, but Humanoid is probably second. So, yeah.
The best bushmate is that really fancy grub. You know the one. It's got like a necklace and everything. It's just a big fat grub. It's got like a big bling necklace. I relate to that quite a lot. So I like that one. It's my favorite.
For sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you where they should have started with Apocalypse or even maybe Utopia, because was it Utopia that had the big planetary rework?
That wasn't till Megacorp, so that was actually after.
Because they're now going to have to, they're currently working with a tile system. They're now going to have to relearn it to the district system as well.
Right. Yeah, so Apocalypse and Megacorp were the two big reinvent the entire
I would say
game.
Apocalypse is the bigger change, though. So yeah, definitely, I think I would agree with you. They should have started here. But hey, console players, go relearn the game. It got better with Apocalypse.
Yes.
Definitely.
I mean, I always used hyperlanes anyway, and locked it to only be hyperlanes, because I didn't really like the other two. So it didn't affect me too much, but I just remember a whole mountain of salt coming from people who used Wormhole and Warp. There was a lot of unhappiness with the change.
Yeah, I mean, I used to use Wormhole, I think, for when we had to build buildings. But I quite liked the change. It was a lot more interesting. Made the gameplay a lot more dynamic. It didn't bother me, to be honest.
You can still sort of play Warp anyway if you just crank up the hyperlanes to max.
Yeah,
that is true. Yeah.
I really don't like that.
Yeah, I like the choke points.
Yeah, the way that the Warfare was designed in Stellaris, they were either going to have to completely change how Warfare works, or they were going to have to change how FTL works, and they decided to change how FTL works, which was probably the easier of the two solutions, because otherwise you would need to develop a whole system of like interdiction pylons and like interdictor ships and stuff, which would be really cool, don't get me wrong, but I think it would have been a lot more complicated than what they decided to go with.
Yeah.
Because, when it was just, you could just kind of warp wherever you wanted. Every war was just an annoying whack-a-mole cat and mouse game. And,
I definitely think the game got a lot better with it, with Apocalypse.
Right.
Yeah, same.
And I mean, we're not really within like this framework of like space opera where like everything is kind of a metaphor for like World War II carrier battles, which is what a lot of sci-fi is. We're not really accurately representing what interstellar war would look like anyway. So why not just have hyperlanes?
I think the best depiction of interstellar, well, it's not really even interstellar, but like space warfare is from the show The Expanse. Like that does it really, really well. Yeah.
Well, it would take place at tremendous ranges. You'd have to factor in things like orbital trajectories. It wouldn't look like two lines of battleships lining up in fairly close order to blast at each other while maneuvering in, sublight speeds. So
yeah, take that, Star Wars.
I mean, it's cool. Space opera has its place. It's not hard sci-fi. It's a different genre that is valid, but people who are like, well, it's just unrealistic that you have to follow these space highways between systems. It's like everything about warfare in Stellaris is already completely unrealistic if you actually look at what we know about space.
Or why you need to use hyperlanes is that obviously when you've got a galaxy, even if you crank it up to having 1,000 stars, there is quite a few more stars in the galaxy than 1,000. So my headcanon is all of the other potential hyperlane routes are blocked by stars because you won't be able to hyperlane through a star. Yeah. So these are the only lanes that are usable, possible, and useful. Yeah. And that's how I kind of get through it.
Yeah, like just imagine that somebody did a bunch of math and charted the best courses between star systems, and these are the ones that make sense. Yeah.
I mean, like, even Star Wars has hyperlanes. You might not think it, but like when you're...
Yeah, they've
got... Oh, Han Solo's however many parsec run. A parsec is distance. So he won that race because he went a hyperlane that wasn't actually, charted or something. Like,
if you've seen the movie Solo, you see his race because it wasn't actually a race in the end.
Yeah,
I actually haven't seen that one. That came out right after The Last Jedi, and I was like,
he had to fly through a bunch of tentacles or something. I don't know. It was.
I couldn't stand Han Solo. I think I was on a plane and I thought, right, I'll get around to watching Han Solo. I watched it on a plane, and about 10 minutes in, I was so bored, I just turned it off. I'd rather read the sick bag, to be honest, than watch Han Solo. It was so dull.
I went into Solo with zero expectations and was somewhat impressed. So it was better than my zero expectations of it would have suggested. But
I tell you what's a really good Star Wars thing. I haven't liked Star Wars in years, I should say. I thought it was quite average. I even don't like the originals, but The Mandalorian, that's a good TV show. Yes. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's a space western. It's basically Firefly 2.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of like all, I gotta sound so pretentious, all Kurosawa films, Well, one was a direct rip-off of Seven Samurai, like one episode, but it was kind of like that. It was like a bit Kurosawa, which I think was the inspiration of the original Star Wars. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So those of you that were...
I can't correct you.
Those of you that were mad...
My secret of always being right, just be so pretentious no one could...
Those of you that were mad about us becoming a Game of Thrones cast last week, you'll be happy to know that we're now a Mandalorian fan cast. So,
all right, what's your rating? All the movies in order, best to worst, go.
5, 4, 7, 8, 6, 3, 2, 9, 1.
I love them all equally is my cop-out answer. No, I did.
Attack of the Clones were best.
Yeah, except for Phantom Menace and Rise of Skywalker are bad. The other ones are varying degrees of good to okay. I'll say that much.
That is the worst one in my opinion.
No, definitely not.
All right, well, we're not going to do Last Jedi discourse on...
that would probably be bad.
So let's move on to Imperator Rome, which is...
Gladly.
Let's move as far as we can from Star Wars back to the ancient Mediterranean and talk about Epirus, who is getting... go for it.
Go on.
You're the Imperator expert. I cede the floor to you.
Well, I mean, I would say that Pyrrhus, who is the leader of Epirus at the game start, is probably the earliest written example of a person with ADHD. Because he was definitely ADHD. But anyway, this dev diary is all about the missions that are going to be added to the pre-order Epirus DLC that you got if you pre-ordered the game, and now you're going to be able to buy it as well. And it's basically all about what Pyrrhus does. You can also choose if you want to go with Pyrrhus or Neoptolemus, which it's a historical bloodless civil war. Neoptolemus died, but that's bad.
But did he bleed? That's the important thing.
I don't actually know how he died. He might have been strangled. I don't know.
Oh, there we are. Completely bloodless then.
Buried alive? It could be. But yeah, you're going to be able to actually choose which side of that conflict you fall down on. And Neoptolemus is actually not a bad character either. He has the blood of both Alexander's bloodline and also the Aequid bloodline, which is what Pyrrhus is. It's pretty interesting, I think, if you can get both of those bloodlines going from the bat. But obviously, Pyrrhus is a very interesting character, so the mission should be quite interesting to follow through.
Who are the Aequids? Sorry, what's the Aequid?
The Aequids are it's the dynasty that ruled over Epirus, and Alexander the Great's mother, Olympias, something like that, was was from Epirus. She was an Aeacid. So that's why Pyrrhus thought he should have been, the successor of Alexander, because he was his closest blood relative.
Got you.
Which I find quite interesting. But yeah, the reason I say, if you don't know, the reason I said he had ADHD is because his entire life was, okay, I'm going to go and do this thing. And then halfway through, I'm now needing to go do this thing. And I'll go over here and do this thing. And then, I need to go back to Sparta, and let's go to Sparta. And then, I need to go to Macedon and go back to Sparta. And I got hit in the head by a roof tile. Now I'm dead. It's basically his life in a nutshell.
It's funny because
we should say that getting hit in the head by a roof tile is not a symptom of ADHD. So if that does happen to you,
no,
just a symptom of Pyrrhus.
Yeah.
Also, he is the person where the term Pyrrhic victory comes from,
right?
As of his wars against Rome. He won, but very, very poorly. And I think one of the quotes from him is, if we win another battle like this, we are lost, which I think is pretty on point.
Yeah, no, it's funny.
So I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
We were talking about this for a while on Twitter. I was actually speculating Alexander had ADHD for kind of the opposite reason, that he just decided to keep going east until his army literally revolted, which seems like kind of hyperfixation mindset to me. Like he never conquered, like, I don't know, Dacia or like anything close to his original capital. It was just like, I'm just gonna keep going east until I hit the end of the world. So that kind of like,
what his thoughts on that was, where it was theorized that after you get to the east of India, he would build a navy, go around India, and find the source of the Nile, which he thought linked into like the Indian Ocean. And that was the plan, is to keep going east, because that would actually be the fastest way home, because we get the ships and just go up the Nile. But it didn't work, clearly.
Yeah, that was. I mean, it worked in the sense that he conquered the entire Persian Empire, but
wasn't Leonardo da Vinci supposed to have ADHD too, or something? Or something like that.
Definitely makes sense. Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to do art. Now I'm going to do engineering. Now I'm going to do biology. Yeah, totally could be.
Yeah. Now I'm going to invent a helicopter 400 years before it actually becomes a real thing.
I loved, if you guys don't know, the Well, There's Your Problem podcast is... it's an engineering disasters podcast where one of the main hosts is Do Not Eat, who's the guy who does a lot of city skyline stuff. That's really cool.
Oh, yeah, his videos are fantastic. If you're a big fan of like industrial history, which I'm obviously going to be a big promoter of, go check out his videos, especially on mining and stuff and steelworks and stuff. It's great.
His
very accurate stuff too.
Well, There's Your Problem podcast. They pointed out Leonardo da Vinci was the only person in history who was smart enough to invent the helicopter, but also to realize that you should never build one.
There was actually something very recently that I learned about Leonardo da Vinci. He theorized that the reason that there's a bulge in the main, I think it's the aorta, that comes out of like every mammal's heart, was because like it would close the valve so the blood wouldn't come back into the heart when it was pumping. And apparently we only proved that in 2015.
Wow.
And he he theorized it like whenever he was born. I just found that pretty interesting.
Yeah, he did that as a baby? That is impressive.
No, when he... Okay. Look, I'm used to misspeaking and making a fool of myself on the podcast, but like I don't think I deserve that particular one.
Rabid Boggling in chat is pointing out people have retrospectively diagnosed a whole bunch of people with ADHD or autism. It's only possible to say it's possible. I mean, that's totally true. Like
that's very, very true, yeah.
Talking about, sexuality of people in the medieval era for that CK3 dev diary. We'll probably never really know what, people actually thought or believed or could be diagnosed with from.
I do like it when sometimes it's so incredibly obvious someone is gay. It's like, oh, we were just friends. We were really good friends.
Oh yeah,
yeah. We were just two women who were like really, really close and slept together all the time.
Oh my god, and they were the best of friends. Yeah. Oh gee.
So they lived together.
And it's also if you go through history, it's also very obvious that some quote male rulers were definitely trans because they were not assigned male at birth, but they still rose up to the throne and presented as male. So
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's very, very hard to say for sure, but we can definitely look at the evidence that we have and say that it's definitely seems to be fairly plain from the sources that we do have, but yeah.
And then there's, of course, ancient Greece.
Yes. Indeed. Ancient Greece, it's only gay if you're a bottom, as we've said before. Yeah, it's not, if it's not gay if you're the top. That's just total hetero behavior right there.
Well, that's how Philip of Macedon was killed by a lover of his, probably, I should say.
Yeah.
A spurned boy lover. The terms for it is a bit weird because it doesn't really work to use modern terms for it because, they didn't consider it gay to have sex with someone of the same sex if you were the top. So how you really define all these things, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to try. But yeah, that's apparently one of the leading theories on who assassinated him.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
To go back to the dev diary, I think there is one thing. I mean, the mission tree looks pretty cool. Definitely, but there's one thing in the dev comments that I think is just the icing on the cake for the dev diary, and that is, if I can scroll down fast enough, in 1.5 you can ask the heads of your great families for a spouse. So right now the issue is you have a son, he wants to get married so that you can continue your glorious dynasty, and the only women available for him to get married to are in their 70s. That happens more often than it really should. And now you're going to be able to say, oh, hey, great family over there, give me a woman and then my son can marry them. And that I'm totally in favor of that.
Yeah. The lack of valid marriageable candidates has been an issue for a while. So it's good that they're kind of adding an equivalent of the present debutante button from Crusader Kings. Which is just none of these people interest me at all. Show me something else. But yeah. So
it would be nice if there was a present debutante as well, like marry one of the lowborns. But this, it would come with a penalty if you were to marry a commoner, and if you marry someone into the from the other great families like you can here, then that would be more prestigious for that family. And that seems to be the way it's going to work. So, I'm very happy with that particular change.
Why would you want to marry a commoner? What's going on?
There is that event in EU4 where you get to say, no, I don't want you to marry a commoner. It's out of the question.
Absolutely.
I generally go
that get a Templar or something? Or is that a different event?
That's a different event. I think it's just a 20 legitimacy hit if you marry the commoner.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it should be some kind of a trade-off. You can choose to marry a skilled commoner, and they'll have stats that are maybe slightly better than average. But then, you either take a legitimacy hit or you upset the patricians or something like that. So... Yeah,
I suppose there was a lot of Byzantines that married commoners. Mind you, there was a lot of emperors who were commoners to start with, right?
Yeah, in the Byzantine Empire.
Yeah,
Can't remember any in Western feudal history because they were a little bit more
I mean, Theodora is probably the most famous woman in the history
of course.
the Eastern Roman Empire, and she started out as a commoner. Nobody can really name any of the other empresses unless you're like a specialist in the field. So. Yeah,
Basilica. There you go. That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, everybody here doesn't count because we're all history nerds, but I guess if you're not a history nerd, you might not even know who Theodora is, which is kind of sad, I think.
She was the leader of Byzantium in Civ 5.
That's true.
Yeah, I was just about to say that was the first time I learned of her was when I played Civ 5. I used to like playing as her because she had really awesome Greek fire ships that I loved.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned so much from strategy. Like, I don't think I even knew what the Byzantine Empire was until Medieval Total War came out. Like, I'd heard of the Romans, but, like, I didn't know that there was, like, this separate Eastern Roman Empire that survived for, like, 1,000 years after.
It was Roman Empire.
Yeah. I mean, it was.
They're the same thing. I knew about the Romans, but I didn't know about the Byzantine.
Right. Well, I knew about like the mid 20th century like movie version of the Romans, where it's like, you know, Charles Bronson or something in a gladiator helmet. Like that was my experience before I started playing strategy games. So
I knew about it before because I was actually really lucky in court. There was a fantastic documentary, and it's available on YouTube now on the BBC it was by a guy called John Romer. I forgot my name of the documentary. Just Google John Romer Byzantium, and it is a fantastic documentary. I watched that as a kid, and
yeah,
it's brilliant. Check that out if you fancy watching a good documentary.
Oh, I hate documentary. No, I'll definitely check that. Anything else about this Imperator Diary before we get on to our main topic for this week?
And the flag when you change into Macedon is great. I love it. Beautiful.
Oh, so Epirus can become Macedon now? Is that what it's?
Well, it always could, but when you formed Macedon, if you form Macedon now, your culture changes to Macedonian, which can really screw you up. Because if you've been, conquering elsewhere, and then you have been culture converting to Epirate, and then you form Macedon, well, good luck. You've now got like a very small amount of cultural unity. And it also changes your color to blue and like the regular Macedon flag. But now you don't change your culture. The flag looks gorgeous, and the map colors. So I don't like that yellow.
So does the other Macedon tag have to not exist for you to do that? Because it looks like it's a different map color.
I believe so. Yes.
Okay.
It does. That's what it needs in the current version. I definitely think you're gonna have to murder Macedon. And let's be fair, Cassandra deserves it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really argue with that. So,
murdering Alexander's mother, and poisoning Roxana and Alexander's 13-year-old kid. He's up there with like the worst of history. For it was what's the guy that invented the 7 layers of hell?
Dante.
Dante.
In Dante's Inferno, in the center of hell, the 3 most evil people in history. Cassander was one of them. Brutus, who shanked Caesar, was another, and another one of the Caesarian conspirators was the 3rd.
So Dante was
Judas?
Caesar.
He was chewing on Judas, wasn't he, the devil, in Dante's Inferno?
Yeah.
Judas might have been there as well.
Yeah, Judas was the very center, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think he was constantly being gnawed on by the devil. I think that's what Judas's punishment was.
Yeah, so Dante was confirmed to be an Alexander and a Julius Caesar stan then. So.
He was big time. Well,
the people at the very center of hell are the people who killed his heroes.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, to be fair, the entire thing was just his fan fiction about how he met up with... who was guiding him through? I've completely forgotten.
Socrates, I think. Wasn't it?
Yeah. It might have been Plato.
It was either Plato or Socrates, I think.
Yeah, one of them. Anyway, it was like his fan fiction, wasn't it?
Actually, basically. We're wrong. Valorgain said it was Virgil.
Virgil, of course it was. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
He meets Socrates or Plato or someone in like the outermost layer.
That's
the
it.
virtuous
You met them in.
pagans. Yeah.
That's it in the first layer, right?
Yeah.
And isn't Dante's Inferno is like the second book? It's either the first or the second part of a 2-book series, and the other one is like exploring heaven.
No, there's 3
he goes up.
So there's Purgatorio, which is about purgatory. Inferno is about hell, and then Elysium, I think, is the last one, which is about heaven.
Yeah, but the only good one is the one about hell, because it's
it's the most meh.
I spent far too much time, like I think it was 2 April Fools ago, making an entire Dante's Inferno in Poland Ball comics. I think I spent about a week drawing Dante's Inferno. It was my magnum opus.
The channel Knowing Better has a really good series on the 3 books.
Cool.
Just like exploring. So you should check that out.
I only know that channel because he did a thing about Wales that was completely wrong and made me very angry.
Anytime there's any video about Finland, my wife points it out every time. It's like Geography Now did a video on Finland. She's like, that's wrong. Well, why do people make videos about Finland? It's pretty funny.
Yeah. Oh man, the one that I guess we're like way off on a tangent at this point, man. I can't stand the infographics channel because, for one, what they do is not infographics. There's almost no infographics on the infographics channel. It's all cartoons, and it seems like their animation budget is like $10,000, and then their research budget is like $1. Like every episode is usually completely wrong, or it's just stuff you could find on Wikipedia, or a mix of both. So
yeah,
I don't know. Calling the infographics channel out right now. You guys need to get your shit together. We're starting some beef
No,
here.
I completely agree. I remember that.
To bring us back on topic, then the thing I found interesting was how the missions to go into Italy will be dynamically changing who your opponents are depending on the local situation.
Yeah. I love how like kind of flexible the Imperator mission system is in that way, where it can fill in objectives based on the state of the world, especially given, playing EU4 Emperor, which is going to be our main topic for this week. The mission trees, some of the newer ones are really good, but they also ask you to do things that can potentially become irrelevant depending on how the situation develops. That's kind of our big topic for this week. All 4 of us played in the Creator Colosseum this last weekend, which was a big community multiplayer event organized by Midgeman. So shout out to him.
Yeah. And did a fantastic job at organizing it and commentating too.
He did a really good job. Yeah. I think Lambert's perspective is that on your YouTube channel now?
It's actually also on Twitch right now that people are watching, because I don't have anything else to show them, so they can just watch this muted.
And then Tokryva, were you recording your perspective as well?
Yeah, it's on YouTube for the most part. For some reason, YouTube decided to start dropping frames heavily. So like the last hour and a half of the second day is missing mostly.
Oh, man.
Which is like, even restarted OBS midstream and it didn't help. It just started chugging again.
Yeah, sometimes OBS just doesn't want to cooperate. But yeah, you can check out Lambert's perspective. You can check out Tokryva's perspective. I have mine as well on the Lore Sworn Order Twitch archives. Tokryva and I were actually in the same voice channel for a lot of the run, so you'll hear us talking on each other's streams too. But yeah, what did you guys think of obviously we had a lot of fun, but how did you feel about, I guess, how the world developed and things like that?
Day 1 sucked.
I wasn't there for day 1 actually, so I don't know what all went on day 1. Oh,
I really lucked out on day 1. I got that quite rare event where you get Isabella of Spain, and she's 6'5" or something crazy. I lucked out and got that. It was just amazing. Got that marriage.
I was quite disappointed in always being the first person to be let go by Father Loris. Anytime you had too many different relations, fuck England. It's like,
okay, to be completely transparent, there was normally a lot of wheeling and dealing with France to try and maintain a peace. It was like, I'll break my alliance with England, and then I'll make an alliance with France, and then break it with France, and remake it with England.
What was so who was everybody for anybody who didn't watch it?
I was Spain. Lambert, you were
Great Britain, England, yeah.
I was playing as Muscovy, and basically because I was late to the party, my lands were already divided up between other players. So towards the end of the first day, I swapped over to Karakyonlu and went on to form Persia in the end.
Yeah, Persia has some really awesome ideas. So good for multiplayer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was supposed to take over for Aldrahill as Trier, but Trier was pretty much dead by day 2. So I ended up playing as Adal, and other than fighting the Ottomans a couple times, I was mostly just playing single player in East Africa. So I was kind of more watching what was going on in the rest of the world than I was really paying attention to what was going on in my corner of the world. Yeah, there was.
What was the most interesting thing that happened to you then? Because I've got a story that's relatively interesting.
Why don't you start us off?
Is it the 33-year war?
Yeah, it is. So everyone's like enemies with this France Burgundy bloc that I'm currently fighting on what you can see here. This is the early part of the war where I'm actually attempting to use troops. That doesn't go well, spoiler alert. But I've got a navy, and well, they don't, because I killed it. Mm-hmm. So I decide to just, for the next 30 or so years, I just blockade them. 100% blockade their entire coastline. They can't build ships to, get at me. Their devastation's going up. I'm earning money from it. And well, for me, it was a lot of fun. And when it was going on, I got a pretty big spike in viewers from the person who I was fighting's viewer base. They were less than happy about it, let's say, which just made it all the more funny to me. Things like, peace out, you dishonorable dick, and all this. I'm like, I shouldn't have to. I'm winning. It's not hurting me to stay at war. It's hurting them. So like, why?
Yes. Let me feel your hate. It's so good.
The more people hated it, the more I did it.
so we've all at this point played a fairly significant amount of Emperor, and that is one of the things that I really like now is just the changes to what they emphasize with naval warfare, where it's like having, for one thing, the blockade mechanic and the fact that you can cause devastation to enemy provinces and like loot enemy provinces by maintaining a blockade, which you said you made like what, 1,000 ducats?
I over 30 years, I probably made about 1,000 ducats from blockades. Plus the amount of money that they were losing, plus the amount of devastation they were getting from it.
Well, and it spikes war exhaustion too, which can help force people out of a war. But the other thing is,
you have to spend points on paying that down.
Yeah, I really like what they've done with high seas attrition, which we talked about, I think, when we were talking about the naval dev diary for Emperor, how boats and also the men on those boats will now take attrition when they enter an open sea zone. So there's like really no way to avoid it, which I think really models the fact that some countries that were predominantly naval powers, it's like, this doesn't just benefit us from the sense that we can win battles against other ships. It's like, oh no, now that we have, Marines are a thing, it's like, I'm actually better at land warfare if that land war happens to be going on the other side of an ocean, because I can actually ship troops without losing a third of them on the way there and then having to wait for reinforcements. so yeah, it's way more fun to play countries like Venice or England or like Portugal now. I really like what they've done with the new naval mechanics.
That attrition thing is actually something that has really hampered my game because I kept having to drag troops back and forth from America. And it really took a massive hit into my manpower and made it quite hard to wage war against France.
Yeah, because you can be France or Germany and, have the biggest army in the world and maybe even a huge fleet that people can't mess with. But if you don't have like naval or maritime ideas, if you're not using Marines, you're going to lose a lot of manpower trying to conduct an overseas war, which I think is pretty realistic.
Yeah. In a game I had playing as France, I took over some colonies from Spain and in the Caribbean, but there were some rebels there that just wouldn't go away. So I was like, okay, I'll just use this random little army that I've got lying around. I think there's 8,000 men. There's only 2,000 or 3,000 rebels. So I'll just bring them over. They'll deal with it. Job done. By the time they got there, they were on like 4,000 men. And then with the also, disembarking -2 to your dice rolls, they lost, and I lost that little army. So it does make an impact. It definitely does.
Yeah.
But it's good.
It's a very good trade style. I also quite like how you can retreat. Well, boats actually retreat now. So it's not you have one naval battle and that's it. You're done. So you can actually recover from a naval loss now, which is fantastic.
Well, I mean, the Frances couldn't. But
yeah, France didn't actually build a navy, which, I think they just gave up because both mine and your navy were massive by the end of the game, right?
Grugy certainly built a navy. He was playing as Denmark. I had a pretty early war against him. I built up 10 heavy ships. I was fairly confident he didn't have 10 heavy ships. So I beat his navy and then just sat in just south of Oslo for a while because I wanted to go and siege all of the little islands and I didn't want his navy to come out and kill my transports. And then he rocks up with 12 heavies and a better admiral than me, and my navy was beaten. Wasn't destroyed, but beaten, and he just sat on it and I couldn't do anything from that point. So I was like, fine, humiliating peace deal. That was pretty embarrassing, but
yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest too, I was planning on doing because one of my missions is to get a PU over you. I think if I captured the lowlands, I can get a PU over you. So I was constantly trying to get my navy up, but seeing a bigger navy get destroyed by Grugy made me totally terrified of your smaller but probably much better navy.
Yeah. I mean, it was before I had all my bonuses to heavy ship combat ability. I think the same number again, I would have won again.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was the big one, wasn't it? Naval engagement width and the admiral ability. Because I think your more maneuver gives you more naval width now, which has
it did before as well. But yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, engagement width is a pretty huge deal now because ships can actually retreat from the front line. So it's a pretty big deal. If you have more ships, that is. If you have fewer heavy ships, you actually want it lower, I think. But yeah.
Britannia absolutely rules the waves in this patch, and they should because they did.
Mm-hmm.
Tokryva, did you have any really interesting stories from the multiplayer?
Really interesting?
Or if there wasn't anything super interesting specifically about the multiplayer, just from playing Emperor so far, what have you noticed? What are you excited about? What are you maybe not as excited about?
I'm actually very excited about the versatility of the new estate system and how in-depth it so far seems to be. And that you can really...
No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and that you can really... in the beginning, you're building up your estates, taking crown land back, giving it away again. But most of the estate stuff tanks your maximum absolutism. So by the halfway point of the game, when you reach the third era, you want to stop the estates from having as much stuff, and you have to start scaling them back, which is... I haven't played that far personally, but I think that's going to be very interesting to see how that dynamic changes over the course of the game as well.
Yeah, it definitely is, because I've played a couple games where I got far enough to reach the Age of Absolutism. I haven't seen the new Revolution stuff yet because I have not played that far. But yeah, it feels like kind of the meta, so to speak, is going to be, do I want to empower my estates early on to get all the like really good bonuses that they give you, and then have to forcibly rein them in later? Like they can auto spawn rebellions if their loyalty drops too low because of something you did. Or
I think that is the design.
Right. Or do I want to
because like most of the stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Or do I want to keep them weak, which means I'm going to be weaker in the early game than people who are exploiting estates to the fullest, but then I'm not going to have this big crisis later on when absolutism becomes a thing where I have to, smash them back down. So both of those strategies seem fairly viable.
I think Ruby, when he was on the podcast, he did say that they took a bit of inspiration from the way that Mayo and Taxes does estates and privileges and such. So that I'm going to just say is probably why it's so interesting, because it's been inspired by the best mod.
And like some of them are really good. Like you can get a +1 to every type of monarch power just from granting privileges to the estates. But
it's just
and then you tank your tax modifier because you're giving away all your crown land in the process.
Right.
Yeah. There's also a really, really powerful one if you have the noble estate, which unfortunately England does not. Because apparently England was devoid of nobles, right?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, take it to Parliament, you a-holes. I think is sort of what they're assuming is how England works.
So much weaker.
The military
one from nobles where equivalent to the amount of land that the nobles have, you'll get that bonus to your maximum manpower.
Yeah.
Like some countries start with like a plus 50% bonus if you take that privilege.
I took it.
It's like Austria can get up to 100k max manpower within 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think, a little bit broken. Not gonna lie.
But it does also decrease your tax income because, like, I think my economy at the start I took
small.
back right back.
Like it's fairly small though. Like I think to 12%. Get like plus 50% manpower only costs you like 15% tax. So yeah, I think that particular policy is definitely overpowered. I used it extensively in my Hamburg run. Which does make a lot of sense because Hamburg, they're like very proud of the fact that they've not allowed a nobleman in the city since like the 1300s or something like that. So the idea that I was like granting privileges to nobles as Hamburg to get more manpower is like, I don't know. I guess these are just like barons or counts or something that live on the outskirts of the city.
You grant them privileges, but they just don't. Not allowed in the city.
Yeah, they can't come.
But theoretically, they would have loads of rights if they were allowed in.
Yeah, so
there's a couple of other weird ones as well. As Bohemia, because of its national ideas and all that, you can get 3 level 5 advisors for a total of like 6 ducats.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's those are the
things that are a little iffy.
Yeah, the two that seem, or the 3 that seem really powerful are the manpower one, the bonus monarch skill one, and then the cheaper advisors ones. If you pass all 3 of those, you can kind of blitz through the tech tree pretty quick. So
I did that in this multiplayer game. I basically really relied on my nobles, but I had a problem then where their influence was always a lot higher than how much they liked me.
Yeah.
So it meant that I could never revoke anything. So say if we played that game up until absolutism, I was so reliant on the nobles that I couldn't get rid of them even if I wanted to. I'd have to suck up to them massively.
Yeah, because like the only way. What was that?
Oh, was that you cut out for me?
You just go revolutionary and chop all their heads off.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they don't like you if their head's in a basket.
So, how many states did you actually have, Lambert?
Just 2, clergy and burghers.
Yeah, I think that is, like, you don't have the noble estate, so you don't get that manpower bonus, but I think having only 2 estates makes it way easier to empower those 2 estates. As Muscovy and as Karakyonlu, I had to juggle 4 estates, and that makes it way harder to actually gain crown land and then sell it back, because you lose a lot more at once.
Yeah, how do the Cossacks and stuff work now in this?
The Cossacks are a estate modifier where you say, hey, I want to hire Cossacks, and you get a percentage of your total manpower limit is then allowed to be Cossacks, and you can then buy the Cossacks. Right. And then there are more estate modifiers to increase that amount as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
we'll have to play a game like Russia or something.
And I had the dhimmi as a doll in the multiplayer game because I was Muslim, but I had conquered a lot of Coptic Christian areas, and I took humanist ideas, and I there's actually a dhimmi privilege that causes them to count 100% towards your religious unity. It's basically like you're just enacting total religious toleration. So they still pay the jizya tax, but they became extremely influential because like more than half of my total development was Coptic. So it was very hard to keep them in line because I had just basically chosen to be like, hey, just whatever religion, you're fine. We're not equal because you guys have to pay more taxes, but you can do what you want. Yeah. I do wish that they would find a way to integrate the estates more seamlessly into nations that get a unique government type, like the statist versus monarchist stuff for Holland or for Netherlands or the the English Parliament. I feel like you're making a trade-off, like it's going to be this mechanic or this mechanic, and I don't really like that. I kind of wish you could have both, but
yeah, I felt a lot weaker for not having the noble estate, especially with that just broken, overpowered manpower one.
It's funny.
It must be very hard for like merchant republics to have no estates, and just have those.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's so much more interesting as well to play with the new estate system than it is to play with the parliament, because the parliament, you get a thing that you get, your debate happens once every however many years, 5 years or 10 years, I don't even know.
It should be 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years. You choose which one you want. You pass a bunch of concessions that just cost anything from something that's completely meaningless to something that's, I'm never going to give you 10 army tradition. What are you thinking?
Yeah.
And then you get the bonus, and that's it. And you're ignoring it for the next 10 years. And it's not interesting. Whereas, having to juggle your estates, juggle the amount of crown land you give versus the privileges, that's so much more interesting. I'd rather have a parliament estate than the parliament system.
Well, make it so that for republics, the estate system becomes a parliament system instead.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you could call it a senate system if you're a senatorial republic.
Yeah, well, because it's like with parliaments, you never really feel like there's this back and forth, like power competition between the monarch and parliament. It's kind of like, parliament is something that you throw some bones at every once in a while to get a temporary bonus. The way privileges work now would make so much more sense for modeling the actual relations between the king and parliament, because it's like, all right, am I gonna give parliament there's that one privilege you can give to the nobles that's like they can call a diet whenever they want.
I lacked a diet as well, the button that was in the middle. That thing I use in every of my other campaigns in Emperor. I use that as soon as it's available every time because it's awesome. Didn't have that as Great Britain. That thing can, like in my France game, that thing gave me a subjugation casus belli on Savoy, gives me claims over, full states, gives you development, gives you development for just improving development twice, and then you get an extra one. Or improving the relations with somebody, then you get a bunch of cash. It's awesome. It's so interesting. There's so much that you can do with it. And in England, you're like,
It's so funny now because like it used to be like, oh man, I can't. I'm gonna play a nation that doesn't have to deal with estates because estates suck, and now estates are so good that it's like when I'm playing as a nation that doesn't get the estates, I feel like I'm playing a worse version of EU4. Especially like the factions, exactly like the factions for like that China gets and like Merchant Republic gets. That mechanic is from EU3 Divine Wind, and it really hasn't changed that much. Like it's really old at this point, and they've come up with better ways to model the same thing. So I would love to see all of that faction stuff, all the Parliament stuff, just folded into the estate system because estates are actually really good now.
The only hiccup I would have with that is like a lot of the art is beautiful for those factions.
That's true. That's true. Well, like
every time you your estates menu, just give a different event with the artwork or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just. It just felt like I was playing a worse version just because of the country I played.
Well, this is why you need to establish a Lord Protector, and get those nobles back.
Yeah, I'd rather stab myself in the eyeballs than get Cromwell in charge.
I like the idea of a Cromwell comes to power and institutes nobility.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I suppose
he was a bit of a hypocrite, let's be fair.
It was, yeah, it's very true.
Yeah. What have you guys been playing in like your offline games of Emperor so far?
Well, it'll come to
pretty far through.
Yeah.
That's been fun.
What was that?
I mean, anyone who knows me knows I've just been playing Manchu and Qing.
Oh, I thought you'd be in Tibet.
Yeah, no, I only like Tibet because it's as close to the Chinese dynasties as possible.
Oh.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, I actually I played Hamburg. I've played a little bit with Munich. Forming Bavaria is a lot of fun. That's probably who I'm going to be playing as in the 3MA multiplayer game that we're starting up this week. But I started a game as the Papal States yesterday and played like basically all day. And man, the Papal States is a lot of fun right now.
That's what my YouTube campaign is, the Papal States.
Yeah,
I agree.
I still feel like you don't have enough stuff to spend the Curia treasury on. Like I would almost like some kind of like a way where like I could siphon funds from the Curia treasury at the cost of devotion or something like that.
There is an event that happens basically calling out the Pope as being a corrupt bastard, and you do get a portion of the Curia funds, and you can choose whether to give it back plus a shit ton of interest or keep it, which is, I mean, it's an event that fires with one.
And I assume brings up reform desire, right?
Yeah.
And a whole ton of corruption.
Well, that's the other thing that I really like about how they've modeled the papacy now is like you get all these events where it's like you can put an end to simony or indulgences or whatever, and it'll lower Catholic reform desire. But then it's like, or you can get a permanent +5 national tax modifier. They're like, look at all the shiny money. Are you sure you want to reform the church? And I'm like, hell no, give me the tax modifier.
You got to fund those cathedral buildings somehow, right?
Like in my version of the world, it's like the 185 theses because I'm just corrupt as shit. Like I'm like anything that makes me richer, anything that gains more land and glory for Rome. We lost the League War.
Luther's going to be like that scene from Life of Brian, just like scrolling all around his church.
Exactly. Yeah. We're gonna need some extra parchment, but we actually lost the League War because I was stuck in a proxy war with England and didn't get called in. Because if you're already in a war, even if you're a member of one of the leagues, you don't get called into the war. So now it's just basically a crew. Like the official religion of the quote-unquote holy, quote-unquote Roman, quote-unquote empire is now Protestant. And I'm like, okay, the only holy Roman empire is the one in Rome led by the Holy Father, and I'm crusading all of you assholes. So, yeah.
I quite like the new stuff with a Protestant empire, how it's inherently unstable between Reformed and Lutherans. I really like that. It'd be either have to go Reformed or everyone who's Reformed leaves.
And if Bohemia stays Hussite, they're like a third faction because they're too Catholic for, like, if the Evangelical Union wins and Bohemia doesn't choose to switch from Hussite to Lutheran, like, they see the Hussites as like, oh, well, you guys are kind of Protestant, but you're also kind of Catholic, so we don't really trust you. Which is
I don't even think that historically, if Hussite had survived, Bohemia stayed Hussite. I think if Martin Luther was born, the Catholics are still doing their old Catholic thing. He wouldn't have nailed some documents to a door. He'd have just fucked off to Bohemia. Because they are, if you take what Protestant means, protesting against the Catholic Church, it's kind of what the Hussites did.
Well, and there were multiple.
Just a few years ago.
Yeah, well, like, there were multiple factions of Hussites. Some of them wanted to actually, like, overthrow the church. Some of them just wanted to reform the church. So, yeah, Hussite could definitely use some more attention, I think, design-wise. Because the way
just been added, and I was like, yeah, but it's not good.
Yeah.
I don't think Protestant, like, you could implement mechanics for Hussite that, models that the divide between the different factions. But I don't think Protestantism would have been a thing if Hussite had survived. I just can't see it being a thing.
The other thing,
maybe they wouldn't even call themselves Hussites after a time.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing is,
Protestant is such a broad term too. It includes Anabaptists, Lutherans,
Methodists,
evangelicals, Methodists, of course, Quakers, all sorts.
Exactly.
Reformed is also technically Protestant.
Reformed, and that includes loads of. I assume like Methodist is more Reformed actually. Presbyterian too.
Anglican.
Yeah, Methodists, Baptists, and Presbyterians would fall under what EU4 calls Reformed. Really, it's Lutheran and Calvinist, but they call them Protestant and Reformed because Luther and Calvin might not exist in any given playthrough of EU4. So.
They should have dynamic names. So, like, if a Reformation starts in Norway or something, it's called like Olaf. Olafian.
Revival of the Norse gods.
Yes.
I'm sold. I want that.
The true Reformation. It's like going
it's like a monk called Ragnar.
I'm going to turn Hellenic. I don't care about the negatives. Roman emperor into turning the empire back to the true Hellenic gods. Yeah, I'm totally down for that.
Yeah. What was else I was going to... Oh yeah, I also wish that you could keep the Hussite church reforms if you decide to transition from Hussite to Protestant, because you have to get rid of defenestrations if you change away from the Hussite religion. What's up with that?
Yeah, I think we've gone over this very many times on the podcast already, but the ability to yeet someone out of a window is pretty good.
And
we're in favor.
It's not the strongest tradition you can pick. It's just, I think it's a discount on harsh treatment for rebels or something. You're throwing the rebel leaders out of a window, I guess. But I pick it anyway because what is it to be Hussite if you can't engage in regular yeeting of fools out of windows? So
yeah, accurate.
Tokryva, who have you been playing as other than the big multiplayer game?
I haven't had much time or mental capacity to do that in the past couple of days.
Yeah.
But I have plans to play as Burgundy because that was my first full Let's Play in EU4, and now with all the reworks that been happened over the past 6 years now, I feel like revisiting Burgundy seems like a fun idea. And
Burgundy got a lot of love in the match.
And also, I want to play as England because for some reason, the way Lambert describes how the estate system is not really a thing for them, but the naval system is so different now. Makes me want to play Great Britain as well. And because of the multiplayer, I want to play Karakyonlu into Persia and beyond.
Yeah, Karakyonlu can actually be a really fun, like all of those little like Turkish beyliks kind of on the outskirts of the Ottomans can be a lot of fun. Because
it was crazy for how long I was in like the top 3 of great powers.
Yeah, we had like so many rare tags form too. Like we had Persia, we had Mughals, we had Kingdom of God, the
West Jerusalem.
Yeah, the Knights formed Jerusalem like right at the very end.
Yeah.
We had Westphalia, which like I don't think I've ever seen Westphalia. I have seen Westphalia, actually. We also had Franconia, which I'm sure I've never seen the AI ever do.
I think that's a new one.
Is it? Okay. That might be why I've never seen it before.
We almost had a Rome,
out. We almost what?
Yeah, we
almost had a rum.
Oh, yeah.
It was quite funny. I think it was Alfred Strike playing Taraman.
It was
Alfred. He wanted to form Rum, so it was like, can you just sell me Constantinople just temporarily so I can form Rum? And as soon as he left the channel, the Serbia player was like, I was about to declare war on him in like 2 months' time. You know?
Yeah, well, at the very end, like Central Europe kind of turned into a giant hug box alliance that went against like all of the quote unquote heathens. So yeah, they didn't keep their promises, but if we've learned anything about colonial European monarchs, they generally didn't.
Me and Quill just died at the end tragically because we declared war on France thinking it was a nice easy war, and then I think Brandenburg and Fleury, who was playing Diffmarsh, and jumped in.
Imagine not being able to be at war with France for like 30 years. You've got so little fun.
Flurry worry as Dithmartian is one of the most terrifying phrases I've ever heard in my life.
His troops are amazing. I don't know how he
terrifying to you. You should like him playing as Dithmartian because it makes the peasants strong.
Yeah, but I was not. When you're playing EU4, you don't represent the will of the peasants generally.
True.
I mean, to be fair, he did play half the time underneath a dictatorship rather than. I guess it was dictatorship of a proletariat.
Yeah, exactly. Dictatorship of the proletariat. There you go. Yeah.
Part of the reason his troops were so strong has already been nerfed in the day 1 patch, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
doing to make crazy.
The innovative offensive bonus of 20% infantry compatibility has been nerfed to 5%.
I see.
And Dithmartian also has it.
I need to not update my build until I've finished this campaign. Then I'm still playing on the preview build. And I am using that idea or that policy. So
I think everyone has been using that policy for the past 2 to 3 years at least.
Yeah. Economic quality also has really strong stuff.
Did he actually?
Isn't that discipline 5%?
I don't remember. Probably. I just remember people saying, "Oh, I'm going to take this in this multiplayer." I'm like, okay.
I've got a couple of. Did he actually end up making anybody else into a peasant republic, or?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I actually ended the game at war with him.
I think I don't know how. I think everybody ended the game at war with everybody.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was on my way with 50,000 Persian troops to start smashing the Spanish in Burgundy, but the time ran out.
Yeah.
They got to Austria, and that was it.
I mean, I wouldn't have minded. I was content on my boats.
Well, it sounds like we're all enjoying this expansion quite a bit. Are there any final thoughts on just cool things that have happened, or things you really like, things that you think could still use tweaking?
I mean, well, I don't want to make like a final assessment. Oh, God, sorry.
But other than that, no, it's a really good update, and one of the better. It's up there with one of the better ones. I
mean, I would be highly disappointed if it wasn't, because it took them over a year to make. But
also true.
Yes.
So far, I'm really enjoying it. I don't want to make like a final assessment because I haven't got to the revolutions yet, and maybe the revolutions are a huge disappointment. But so far, it's very, very good.
Yeah, I haven't got to the revolutions yet.
I should say the states are over patch, and I think that's probably the thing I enjoy the most about this is the state mechanics.
Yeah, if you're playing outside of Europe, you're going to generally see more improvements from the patch than you are from the DLC. So I would say if you don't ever play in Europe, this DLC is not as essential as the patch features are. But yeah. Well,
I assume you all talked about the new studio in Barcelona last week.
Right.
We did.
Right. Which is go for it.
Which is going to be now that this patch is getting pretty decent acceptance, or what the word is, I don't remember now. Jeez. Anyway, it's that they're going to continue developing EU4 still, rather than this being the last patch. What we saw with like the previous CK2 patch, and then announcing CK3 last year.
Yeah.
So that's also going to be interesting to see that the game will still be continuing to get updates, and hopefully we'll see that Parliament change coming in.
Yeah. Did they actually say for sure that they're working on future updates for EU4? Because we discussed that last week, that they said the new studio is going to be focused on Europa Universalis. But
it says in the press release that Anderson, so Johan, will assemble a small core team to initially oversee ongoing development on EU4.
Okay, well, maybe
I saw someone say that they'd seen a comment from one of the devs on Reddit as well, saying that this won't be the last DLC. I don't know. Okay. I didn't see the comment itself, though, so I don't know how true that is.
Yeah, I would have thought so. I mean, because they've just taken it over, right? I mean, I don't think it's... I wouldn't want to be in a position where I take over a development for something from someone else and then release one DLC and then call it a day. You know, I'd want to.
I just find it interesting because they're moving to Barcelona. I'd assume quite a few people working on EU4 right now in Stockholm that would rather stay in Stockholm. So there's going to be a big rejigging of people at Paradox, I would say.
Well, I assume like they're going to still work in Stockholm for the time being. Is going to be like it's going to be two offices both working on it. Yeah. I assume, especially because everyone's social distancing at the moment, so it's basically the same thing anyway. Like,
yeah,
it's just a very much bigger distance.
Yeah.
It's
just the dev clash is going to be awful. There's going to be lag instead of all being in the same bloody office.
Yeah.
Even then, anyway, that was producing so much lag anyway.
Well, they need to just drill through and just put a dedicated fiber line that goes from the Tinto office to the Stockholm office. That's the best solution.
That's a good point from Agavade. Maybe it'll push them in to fix out of syncs. There actually wasn't any out of syncs. Was there?
Yeah. There was one actually.
A few, but only after hot joins. Yeah.
EU4 is very stable for hot joins.
They've done a fantastic job in the last couple of years on out of syncs. Crusader Kings 2, I've been playing a lot of that multiplayer, and even modded, there's not many out of syncs for that anymore. And EU4 is vastly improved from even just a few years ago when it was out of sync central.
Yeah. I mean, I think
in a recent Stellaris multiplayer with Lambert, I was incredibly surprised how few out of syncs there were beyond the hot join out of syncs as well.
Yeah,
we modded that thing severely,
and still very, very few out of syncs that were not related to hot join.
Yeah. And if you go back to playing like Victoria 2, the amount of out of syncs where you get Mac game, it's just crazy. Well, and I remember thinking back years ago that was relatively stable, but I guess that goes to show how well they've really cracked down on out of syncs in the past few years.
Yeah. Multiplayer became more popular, I guess.
Well, I think there's definitely still places for EU4 to go. I would be kind of surprised if EU5 is not in some state of development right now. Like, we know CK3 went into pre-production in like 2015 or something. So I'd be kind of surprised if there's not already discussions happening about EU5. But I could especially after seeing how well Emperor turned out, I could definitely go for some more EU4 DLC. I think I mentioned Southeast Asia definitely needs to be brought up to the standard of like literally the rest of the world. Like they're kind of the one place, like Southeast Asia, Spice Islands kind of area. That really has not gotten a lot of love. But we'll end here. Why don't we go through everybody? What is your wish list for, you can go down to Spain and, demand from Johan what the next DLC is going to be. What would you like to see?
Well, it was Revolutions before this came out, but now there's only one, and that's Dynasties. I want a family tree. That's it. I mean, I want
family tree to change the whole personal union game up, because personal unions are
they're still confusing
awful.
And bad. Yeah, they're still confusing and bad to this day.
Yes, I would totally agree with that. I want a dynasty thing as well. Doesn't even need to be anything like special, just a literal basic family tree. And if there's somebody that on the family tree that isn't married, you can have another royal marriage with someone. If you don't have anyone there that's free, you can't. It just makes sense to me. So I would agree with that. Do I have a gun in this situation? Just out of curiosity.
Do you have a different answer based on whether you have a gun or not?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So what's your gun answer and what's your no gun answer?
Gun answer: remove mana. I hate mana.
Oh, that is a good answer. That is.
But I wouldn't be able to
complete a gun you'll need.
Yeah. No gun answer would be development. I don't like it at all. I don't like the, click a button and you get more development. It's not interesting at all to me. I'd rather just sort of get him to hire Gigao from Mayo and Texas and just, get him to implement a population dynamic development system, development being based off the amount of infrastructure and population of the province. I would love that, like, so hard.
Just put pops and everything.
I mean, it makes games better. So I mean, it doesn't not necessarily pops, but I would like a number, just like how many people live in this place.
Yeah.
Am I going to be conquering a deserted desert, or am I going to be conquering somewhere with a massive population? Because development doesn't really cut it for me in that sense, because you don't get more people to appear out of thin air just by clicking a button.
Yeah,
it doesn't. It does nothing for me. Development. I've always really hated it. Remove mana, add pops, give me a dynasty. That's EU4 perfected.
Yeah, more missions too.
Oh, trade as well. Trade is bad because in EU4 trade is literally theft, and that's not the case.
Yeah,
it was mutually beneficial for it was more beneficial generally for Europeans, but I mean, none of the Indian kingdoms would have sold Goa to Portugal or bits of Bengal to Britain, etc., if they didn't get something out of the trade network. Right now, trade is literally theft, and that's not trade.
And selling luxuries like from China was just a huge way of making money for Chinese merchants on the coast.
Mm-hmm.
So those are my 4 wishlisty things. Only 3.5 need a gun.
I think
what's on your wish list?
Way more in the entire game just revolves around monarchies, and just a way more in-depth republic system. To the point of the new estate system would definitely be something on my wish list.
Yeah,
but
I can see
beyond that, I think the game is in a very, very good state right now.
Yeah, for what it is, I think it's one of the better, like, most elegant, sort of well-designed, cohesive strategy games. I mean, there's some issues right now with balancing with the HRE that could use some help, but
the other thing would be revamp the colonial system, and that, like, the New World is so empty, which it wasn't, and that should be different.
Yeah. We talked about that on a previous episode too, how it's like, the way the New World is modeled is completely out of date from what we now actually understand from a historical perspective. But, the way the game is set up, to make it realistic, it would make it very unfun to play as a Native American nation, which is historically accurate. They did not have a good time in this period. But
and also WASD movement for the map.
No, go away.
Yes.
Go away.
Yes.
No, you are
one more.
I'm banning you from going to Spain.
One more on the WASD team.
I'm banning you going to Spain. Absolutely not.
Tolerance of the true faith.
You are both heretics. And I'm now a Hussite, so get ready for the window.
I would.
Are we going to get defenestrated now?
Oh, yeah.
I would add one more thing to my list, thinking about it. I think I would like a different sort of, a less linear tech system. Like, at the moment, either the Far East is basically up to date with Western technology in a very linear way, and rather than it diverging and Europeans having an upper hand in certain ways, and the Far East having upper hands in different ways. It's too universal. I think I would like a more dynamic.
Yeah, here's that Lambert's gun answer was get rid of development. My gun answer is every tech in the game is an independent invention that can spawn somewhere and spread from that location, instead of having a tech track. Like Spanish Square, there we go. It spawns in Toledo and spreads to the rest of the world from there.
That'd be fantastic. I'd love that.
Some of them would be way more likely to spawn in China because China was ahead of Europe on several things. So
meritocracy is something that is an institution that spawns in China. Actually, I think it's in China from the very start of the game in Mayo and Taxes, and the Europeans have a big tech disadvantage for the majority of the game purely because they don't get that institution.
Yeah,
they get the other early institutions way faster than China. But
China
meritocracy,
gunpowder.
It's their advantage at the start.
Yeah.
So I'd love that. That'd be fantastic. But I also think it's quite important to maintain the the military advantage that Europe has, just for a gameplay point of view. Because
but not at the very start of the game. They were
not from the very start. No.
As the game progresses, obviously the Europeans are getting more and more institutions that take a long time to go to China. So they will, the penalty that they get to their tech is eventually less than the loss they're getting from not having meritocracy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's
also a more broken up India. That's another thing. I want to see India not turn into like 3 nations every single game. So it's actually easy for the Europeans to exploit that dynamic. It doesn't matter
how many times you split that up. It's always going to be 3. It's too ingrained into India right now.
Mm-hmm. It seems like Ming is extremely unstable this patch, by the way. India has gotten way more stable, but I've seen Ming explosion in like 75% of the games that I've started. And it usually ends up with the Yue is like the big dynasty in the south, and then the Qing take over the north, and you have kind of like a northern and southern dynasty period happen.
That's interesting, though.
Yeah, that's what I've seen that 3 out of the 4 games that I've played for a long time.
Not as interesting the third time.
Yeah, I think the AI should be a lot more aggressive in uniting China.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, it seems like Qing can form, and then they gain the Mandate of Heaven, but then they don't ever fully conquer China, which, I mean, that happened at various points in Chinese history, but it seems kind of weird in the EU4 time period because we're used to having a large united Chinese empire, whether that be a Han Empire or a Manchu Empire. So
the Mongols come back.
Or that. I mean, if I'm playing as the Oirats, then that's inevitably what happens. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So before we get out of here, other than what we've already discussed, Lambert, what have you been up to, and where can people find your stuff?
I have been playing quite a lot of Emperor, also, as usual, quite a lot of Imperator Rome. And right now I'm doing a Papal States run on the channel. This Saturday I'm going to be starting a multiplayer where I'm going to be France. And then the Monday after that, I'm going to be starting a multiplayer where I'm going to be Bohemia. So lots of content coming.
Tokryva, where can people find your stuff, and what have you been up to?
You can find me on YouTube. Tokryva is my username. I'm currently taking a short mental health break because the last months have been rough with everything going on in my life and everyone's life in general as well.
Yeah.
But I've been playing Stellaris and Civilization 6, and now with Emperor out, I'm definitely getting back into EU4 because for the longest time it's been, for me, like, there's so much new stuff coming, I don't feel like playing the game as it currently is. And
exactly.
Which is such a standard grand strategy game feeling that so many players have. And then you always see spikes in user base whenever a new expansion releases.
I coined the term for that feeing. There's something new on the horizon, so I don't want to play now. It's called the paradox.
Oh, jeez. But yeah, other than that, it's been interesting and being on the show. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, anytime.
Great guest. So welcome back anytime.
Yeah.
Once there's big Stellaris news, I'll come back for sure.
We'll try to time it for that for sure. Yeah. Loris, what have you been up to, and where can people find your stuff?
I've been working on that Humankind thing, which should be up relatively soon. So keep an eye out on Humankind's social media shit. Apart from most stuff outside of work and games, I've destroyed a wall in my house, which I have to rebuild now. That's pretty exciting. Completely uninteresting to anyone listening. And also trying
Minecraft, and I destroyed a wall. I was like, oh, good job, buddy.
Hey, I've been playing a lot of Minecraft lately, so don't knock that.
I don't. That's one of the games I'm trying to avoid, because if I get into Minecraft, I play it for non-stop for like months, especially like modern Minecraft. So I avoid like
Minecraft is the single most influential game on my life ever by massive amount.
Oh yeah. So I still, like, when quarantine started up, we started a Minecraft server with my 3 siblings, who we all live in different parts of the country now, and we've been playing that like every Sunday night. So, and nice. I built a miniaturized city inspired by Constantinople, so relevant to
love it
to our historical listeners.
I'm also surprised how fun Minecraft Dungeons has been.
I haven't played that yet.
It feels extremely Diablo 2-esque. Okay. And it even has the secret cow level.
Oh, nice.
Bovine glory, love it.
Awesome.
Somebody in chat mentioned Terra Firma Craft, and that is something, if you're into grand strategy or like Dwarf Fortress or anything, that sort of sphere of nerdy games, Terra Firma Craft, it is like crack. You don't play it if you value your free time.
There's also another one. Is it RL Craft? It's like just full of monsters. You'll die like immediately.
Yeah.
You've just spawned. Oh, a dragon spawned above you. You're dead.
Yeah.
All right.
Give that a try.
I'm going to go check that out. And so what the patch notes really mean will be going up sometime in July. And then
and also
late October, early November, all of our episodes should be up on YouTube. And it's Loris' fault because he told me specifically to go play Terra Firma Craft.
No, you should go play RL Craft, and every time you die, you do another patch note. If there's about 1,000 patch notes, you'll be done in a week because you will die a lot.
You've done it in 5 minutes.
The Emperor ones are about half written already. For those of you who are asking in chat, I'm hoping to have them up by Friday morning US time. So basically the day before, or the day after this goes up on SoundCloud. Yeah. So.
I've also been avoiding playing that new CNC, which were remastered, because I know I'll just spend the entire week playing nothing but CNC remastered. So.
Acknowledged.
Yeah, as I so you can find me on I'm AsaTJ on Twitter. That's ASATJ. Loresworn Order is my YouTube/Twitch channel. Definitely going to be playing some Emperor. Haven't decided what nation I want to play as just yet, but that's going to be starting this Sunday for my single player game coming back. And I've got some strategy previews coming up soon for stuff that's definitely relevant to people who watch this that I can't talk about yet. Seems like I'm saying that every week now. Not specifically Paradox related, but other.
You should play as Death Martian.
I've thought about Death Martian. I think that would be a lot of fun. That's like in my top 3.
There's Total War Troy coming out, so I'm just going to assume that that's what you're talking about.
You can assume all you want. I cannot confirm nor deny. I swear. I swear on Achilles' shiny abs that I'm not allowed to say anything about Total War Troy right now. Follow us. Follow the podcast. We're NoCB on every platform that has podcasts, unless it's one you haven't told us about yet. Or
YouTube.
Yeah, which literally all I have to do is click upload at this point, and I still haven't done it. But yeah, the meme dies when the episodes are finally up on YouTube. The meme dies. So I want to kill that meme.
You have to.
All right. Thanks for joining us once again. Thanks, Tokryva, for being on the show.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
ours too.
Welcome back to talk about some Stellaris sometime, and we will see all of you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.